Yeah. Okay, guys, was our multi-layer switch. I think I've already configured for this one, right? So this PC, we are talking about inter-VLAN
But
routing. What do
I
you mean?
can't see your screen.
You can see my screen? Uh,
I can't.
Yeah,
No.
we can see your your mouse pointer, but we can't
Yeah,
see
it's just a
anything.
gray screen
oh,
on it
okay,
for
okay.
us.
Hold on. I think I'm not sharing the entire thing. No, hold on. Uh, share. Uh, share. Yeah, I have to share the entire screen. Okay. What about now, guys?
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Cool. Okay. What does inter-VLAN routing mean? Inter-VLAN routing is, see, VLANs are made that VLANs like a VLANs are a broadcast domain. VLANs are made like one packet broadcast from this VLAN should not travel to this one. VLANs were made with the point of segregating, completely differentiating. Any packet from this side should not travel to this side. But there might be scenarios or situations where you want inter VLAN routing. You want to communicate from VLAN 100 to 200. You want to keep them separate, but you want to have some form of communication between both the VLANs. So there are two ways. You can use a switch or you can use a router. If you want to use just a switch and not a router, you must have a multi-layer switch, because initially what we are doing is we are routing the packets, because directly they're not in the same network, guys. They're in different networks, first of all. And even if they were in same network, VLAN does not allow packets from one VLAN 100 to travel to VLAN 200. That's why VLANs were made, virtual LANs, two different LANs, two different completely LANs. So for the packet to travel to this side, either you need IP routing on the switch or you need a router. Okay, let me just disconnect the router for a while. Cancel. First, we will do it with the switch. Um, I've already done the configuration on the switch. Show running config. Show running config. Guys, these commands like show running config, you should remember it by your heart. So whenever you need to check things, you should be, this is like the entire configuration. So I have put a IP on fast Ethernet 0 by 1. How did I put a IP on this? By using the command no switch port. See, a switch port, a port on a switch. What do I mean by a port? This is a port on a switch. A port on a switch by default is not supposed to have an IP address, right? How does switching work, guys? Like, if it is not supposed to have a IP address, how are switches meant to forward packets from one port to another port? Do you remember switching when we discussed it?
Did you say how does it know which port?
Yeah, so I'm basically asking, if switches are not supposed to have IP addresses on their ports, how do they forward packets from like one port to another port? How do they know? Let's say if these two PCs were in the same VLAN, yeah, port number is right, great. But if these two PCs were in the same VLAN, how does this switch know to forward packet from this side to this side? Let's say if this PC was connected as well, how does the switch know that MAC address? Okay, finally we have reached there. Switches work on MAC addresses, right? I told you switch is like a local postman. He does not bother about your location address. He knows you by the name, right? He knows this
Right,
guy
so the
is,
MAC table.
yeah, so it has a MAC table. Switch works basically on MAC table. Let's look at the MAC address table, guys. I don't know if it has entry. Here what I have done is I have converted that switch port to a basically to be used like a router's port, different from switch port. Why we did that, we'll talk about that later on. But let's go back. Um, Control C. I say show Show MAC address table. I don't have any entry because I think the entries remain for 300 seconds. So if you don't do any ping, it just flushes out the entries. But let me just do a ping in real time from this side to this side. Even the packet fail, even if it has failed, um, it has failed because I had changed the default gateways when I configured the router. So let me just go back. IP configuration 10.1.100. And what was the IP put here? I put here as it was 10.1.100 and 20.1.200. Not sure why the packet failed, but if we did the packet switch, basically, see, when I send this packet from this MAC address, switch records it that it is coming from this port F0 by 1. So it records it to this port. Hold on. So I ping from here and the switch forwards it. When the switch gets a reply, guys, replies from this guy's MAC address. This is the MAC address over here, 2347. It records this MAC address on this port number. So switch maintains an entry of MAC addresses mapped with the port numbers. So we should be seeing entries right now after we have done a successful ping. And show MAC address table. Okay, so it is not maintaining a MAC address table. Why is it not maintaining a MAC address table? Why doesn't it have entries? Is it because we turned this port into a router's port? So we use the command no switch port. That is why it does not have an entry. I can check that if I want to. Let me just check that quickly. Is that the reason it doesn't have an entry? I connected this PC to F0 by 3. And guys, whenever you have some some error or something new that you are not expecting, you should always check on that thing, to see why it is working like that or why it is happening. Let me put this in the same network 10.1.4 2550 over here, and I want to even if the packet fails, I want to transfer it from this side so that I can see this. Let me just do this. Ping from here to here. Packet is going to fail because this one generates an ARP and it is asking the IP address of this guy over in VLAN 100. The ARP goes through and the packet is discarded. Now let me just, what I really wanted to check was why didn't it record the MAC addresses of these guys? Is it recording the MAC address of this guy? Let me go over here. So and it has recorded the MAC address of this PC. What do you think is the reason that it is recording the MAC address of this PC but not of these PCs?
It's because you put the no switch port for the first two.
Yes, it is no longer acting as a switch port, because these ports, if they were acting like a normal switch port, it would have put them in the MAC address table, because switch works on MAC addresses. We know it works on the, if switch does not have the MAC address table, it is basically a failure. It cannot do anything. But since this one is still a switch port, and these two guys made them basically work like a router's port and only bothering about IP addresses, the switch did not bother to record their MAC addresses because they are no longer a switch port. This is still a switch port, and therefore the switch has kept the entry for this guy. Are you getting my point, guys? So these are some of the things you get occasionally, and you should try to find out why it is happening like that, or why the switch is behaving like this. The switch is behaving like this because we have put these where these two ports are basically working as router's port, and this port is still working as a switch port. So it is still working on the switcher. Okay, but we don't want to deal with this right now. Uh, Let me just go back, go on the switch, and what we did, we turned, let me go back to the configuration I showed you. I turned these two ports into router's port. I assign, now it is a router's port. I can assign an IP address. I can, this is called a multi-layer because routers work on layer 3, and this is IP address. That means it is, the switch is working like a layer 3 device, that is like a router. Over here I have assigned this thing, and this one was in VLAN 100, this one is one in VLAN 200. There was one more command for this thing to work. Do you remember one more command that was specifically put on the multi-layer switch for this to work, inter VLAN routing? There was a very important command.
Was it the encapsulation one?
No, that was on router. I'm not doing the router one right now. We don't need to put that encapsulation command over here. There was a very important command on the switch for packet to be routed from this side to this side. Without that command, even when you have put the IP addresses, it will not work. Any idea, guys? Remember this command? IP routing. Why do we need to put this command on the multi-layer switch but not on the router? Any idea, guys? We need to put this command specifically on the multi-layer switch but not on the router. Why?
Because the router drops broadcasts.
No, Braven, you're close, but yeah, router is already routing. Its job is routing, so it does not need that command IP routing. It is supposed to do routing, right? But the switch over here, multi-layer switch, is supposed to work as a switch, not as a router. So if you want, they are giving you the option. If you want to make this switch work as a router, then you can put the command IP routing. If you don't put that command, this switch will not do IP routing because it is initially not supposed to do IP routing. It is supposed to forward packets based on MAC addresses, not on IP addresses, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got that, Bravin?
Yeah. No, I thought it was a trick question. I
Yeah.
understand.
No. That is why this switch, and we don't need to put that command on router. Why? Because the job of the router is to do routing. So you don't need to enable routing by default. If we had an option to enable switching on router, we have to put commands like maybe IP switching or MAC address switching. But I've never seen that till now. I've never seen that a router work as a switch. So I've never seen that till now, but maybe in the future we will have a router that will also work as a switch. So you don't have to buy switches, you can just buy a router and it will also work as a switch. Maybe in the future, but not right now. Okay. The closest thing I can say a router working as a switch is, have you seen the guys your Wi-Fi router at home? Have you tried to check that Wi-Fi router you got at your home? They have actually, it's not just a router. They have, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, we can hear.
So the Wi-Fi router we have got at home is, a very unique device. What they have done is they have combined a switch, a access point, and a router together, and they're not. It is not a complete switch. It is not a complete router, and it is not a complete access point, but it does the job of three of them. So that's the closest thing I can tell you of a router working as a switch. Normally in the industry you will never find something like that. So the wireless routers we have at our home was specifically designed so that, because if you look at the router at your home, at the back side of the router, they have given you some ports also, so that you can do switching. It works as Wi-Fi, so it works as an access point, and it does routing also. So that's the closest thing you can have. Okay, never mind. With these two with with a multi-layer switch, you need to put ports as no switch port, assign IP addresses to the ports, and finally enable IP routing. Uh, Enable IP routing, and this should route packets from one VLAN to another. Are we able to get this, guys? So what we have to do to enable inter VLAN routing? Put ports as no switch port. Both of the ports have been put as no switch port. We put IP address. So this one in the range of 10, because this is in the range of 10. This in the range of 20, because this is in the range of 20 VLAN 200. By the way, I forgot to mention one more thing. You have to put these ports in their whatever default VLANs, whatever they are supposed to. So one more point is there. Put ports in their respective VLANs. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 4 points should get your multi-layer switch to enable IP routing. Right, guys? Um, do you want me to put this in the chat as well?
Sure.
Hold on. Oops, I don't know if I can. One more thing you have to do before it is complete. The IP addresses you assign on these ports should go as default gateway for these guys. Right? Why do we need default gateways, guys? Because if this PC wants to route a packet to a different network of 20, it doesn't know how to reach to network 20. So it is going to send it out to its default gateway. Whenever you don't know how to reach another network, you use the default gateway. That's why we need to put these two port IP addresses as their default gateway. Right, guys?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, so guys, I think the practical with the multi-layer switch is, um, you know, okay and done with, um, this should enable the inter VLAN routing. So if you want to do this practical, you can do it. I'll give you 10-15 minutes. But just before we complete this practical, um, one thing I want to do is we also had the router thing. The router thing, uh, and that was using a router if we had a normal switch over here. So guys, let me just quickly do this for you again. And how am I going to do this is you can, do the same practical later on. I want all the configuration to be gone. So the easiest way for all configuration to be gone is reload the switch without saving it, reload. If you don't save configuration that has been modified, and say no. If you reload the switch without saving, guys, all the configuration will be gone from the switch, right? Fast forward the time, go back to the switch. No. Let's check if the configuration has been deleted. Run show run. There is no configuration, but that command is still there. IP routing command is still there. Rest of the configuration is gone. So let's configure the switch quickly. Config T. One command we need is our IP routing. So that enables routing on the switch. Next command is go into the interfaces and put them into their respective VLANs. So int f0 by 1 switch port access VLAN 100, switch port access VLAN 200. Now put the IP addresses as you want it. So int f01 IP at 10.1.1.100 255.0.0.0. Oh, why didn't it take the IP address? Oh, so on the switch port, on the interface, you have to put the command no switch port to make it a router's port, right? So you must use this command no switch port. So the link went down for a second and then came back up because it converted from a switch port to a router's port. Now you can put the IP address. It will accept the IP address. I don't think you need to put the no shut command, but just in case. Let's do the same thing for F0 by 2. No switch port. And the IP address is 20.1.1.100. And no shut. That's it. That's all the configuration you have to do on the multi-layer switch for this to work. Do you want to put me this? Do you want me to put this configuration in the chat, guys, so that you can do it on the switch?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is for the multi-layer switch. Put it in the chat. You can refer to it, but try to don't copy paste. Try to do it on your own. So this is all the configuration. You put the IP address over here. These guys should have the IP address. Make sure the default gateway is what the IP you used on this guy. And after you have done this, a few packets may fail due to ARP, but initially you will be able to ping simulation real time. The packet becomes successful, and I am having inter VLAN routing from this side to this side. By the way, guys, there's one more thing you should know. Uh, the PCs have no idea that they are in VLAN 100 and 200. The PCs have no idea that they are in this VLAN. Do you think the end devices understand VLAN? Who is putting these guys into different VLAN?
The router is or multi-layer switch.
The switch. The router is even the router is not putting them in different. The switch is putting them in the switch. We tell the switch that this port is VLAN 100 and this port is VLAN 200. Therefore, these PCs and laptops are in different VLANs. These PCs and this laptop has no idea about VLAN, and they don't know if they are in separate VLANs. They have no idea, you know. So if they were in the same network of 10 and put into different VLANs, they would just forward the packet even without a default gateway because they are in the same network, and the packet would go to the switch. The switch discards the packet, seeing that this port is on a different VLAN. Okay. Now we have done it with the multi-layer switch. I want to disconnect the switch. Maybe not delete the switch because we have done configuration with this. Go to the switch, put a normal, this is a normal switch. I want to connect the normal switch to these guys. Take this router out over here. Now, since we have a normal switch, we cannot use the command no switch port, and therefore we need a router. What we did on the routers, Sarthak, to get this thing working. Remember?
What was that, Raman? Sorry, I couldn't hear you properly. I just heard my
Wh-
name.
wh-
What did you say?
Now that we cannot use the switch to do the routing part, we need a router. So we put a router here. What configuration we did on the router to make the inter-VLAN routing work?
Is it now that you do the encapsulation?
Yeah, so now you do the encapsulation. That is correct. Braven,
Because
you
the
remember?
encapsulation only works on the router, correct? Not on the switch. So when you go into router CLI, the encapsulation has to be done, right?
Yeah, because see, on the switch, encapsulation is done by default. The moment you put the port on 0 by 1, it does the encapsulation. Maybe negotiates this also. So it does it automatically. But on the router is not supposed to be dealing with trunks and VLANs. So there you have to put it specifically. Because the router's
Can
job
you
is not to deal with trunks and encapsulation. Its job is to route packets from one network to another network. So what do I have to do in the router?
so open it, go to CLI,
Okay, yeah.
enable it, config T.
So I say no, enable config T.
Now you are to encapsulate. I forgot the command for encapsulation. But do the int first, int whatever the port is.
Okay,
Press enter.
no, you're missing out something, Sarthak. Anybody else who can tell me? Okay, yes, Aryan, go on.
Yeah, so you have to split the ports. So you'd have to do 0.1 and 0.2 to
Okay,
create two different,
okay. Why do we need to create two different sub interfaces?
because there's two different VLANs, so you have to have one for each to send.
Correct, because one interface is you cannot use the same interface for VLAN 100 and 200. So
Yeah,
physically we are using the same interface, but virtually we are dividing it into two parts, right?
yeah.
Okay, so I can give the IP address over here, right? So let me give it for the IP address for VLAN 100 255.0.0 I say, okay, this one is done. I've given the IP. What else I need to do this, guys? Next command.
Now you do the encapsulation to set the VLAN. Right?
Correct. It is giving you the notification also that you need to set the encapsulation. So what does it say? Configuring IP routing on a LAN subnet is allowed if that sub interface is already configured as part. So IP routing can be enabled only if you have encapsulated it either as a .1 queue or ISL. We don't use ISL so much these days. I think .1 queue is the more popular one. So I say encapsulation .1 queue, and I have to give the VLAN number 100. That's it. Exit this. What do I do now? Split it the second part, right, Aryan?
Yeah, second part, and then the same thing. Encapsulation with 200 now.
Okay. And what about the IP address? Do I give it
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
you have
range
to
of 10 or 20?
20.
Because
It's the 21. Yeah.
VLAN 200 is using 20, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Encapsulation .1 Q 200. That's it. Anything missing, guys?
No, that's it, I believe.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Can you scroll up? You did .1Q 100 for the one above, right?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that is. Oh, anything missing? Because there is one thing that is missing right now. Nix. Has Nix joined in already? No.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Remember I told you he's gonna be away for a bit.
Okay. Stephanie, Amna. There is one major thing that is missing, right, guys, before I close the CLI for the router. One very big thing. Just
No,
think
no
about it.
shot.
Is it no shutdown?
Okay, if I put no shutdown over here, is that supposed to work? Is that all?
Is it a enabling command?
No. There's a major thing. It is related to no shutdown. You have correctly identified that, but it's not the way I wanted it to be. Look, this guys. Show, if I type do show, Zain, you want to say something? Do show IP and brief. Even the IPs have not been assigned, guys. You know, somehow even the IPs have not gone down. Why was that?
But
I
didn't we
did,
just do the
yeah. Even the IPs have not gone down, and the ports are by default shut down. So there are some things we need to know. First of all, to enable the port or to make the port no shutdown, we have to do it in the main port, that is the gig 0 by 0. These are sub interfaces. So whenever you want to enable the port, you do it on the whole thing. No shutdown. Remember this command, okay? No shutdown on the whole thing. Second thing, after you have done the encapsulation, you can add the IPs. Not before that, I think. That is why it was not going. IP add. This was 10.100 and the other one was 20.100. And just verify the thing before you leave the router's CLI. Do show IP int brief. Now the IPs are there and the port is up. So you must verify this before you leave the CLI. You cannot leave the CLI if you don't have any IP or the ports are down. The ports must be up and you must have IPs assigned to these guys. And this should turn to green. Okay, the default gateway is the same I had put over here. but there is one major thing missing, and that's why I cannot route from this side to this side. Hold on. I have done all the configuration, this side to this side, and still the packet is going to fail. You might think this is due to ARC, but I can do another packet and it will still fail. There's one major thing missing in this topology, which I have not done, and therefore the packets are not being routed from this side to this side. What is that major thing, guys? Braven, Zane, Amna. Tell me. What kind of port is this, guys?
Do you have the trunk
Switch port.
switch?
So I have to make this port trunk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because this port is
See.
right now in VLAN number 1, and these are VLAN 100 and 200. So data for data traffic of both VLANs to go on this side, on this link, this must be turned to trunk, you know. So that is one thing. Why trunk? Because you want multiple VLAN data. Trunk means you're carrying multiple VLAN data from from this side to this side.
Aman, I have something to ask. What I realized is that I wasn't able to turn that interface into a trunk interface until after I configured the router. Why was that?
I think yesterday when I turned, yeah, yesterday also I turned it trunk later on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because by default, I think routers are not supposed to be dealing with trunks, and you did not make it, um, the router's port was also on one, and I think that's the reason, Um, but I think you should be able to make it a trunk even before you do the encapsulation part,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So I think it should not be a problem. You should be able, if you want to turn a link between a switch and a router to trunk, there should be no issue. But we'll check it out. Hold on.
Okay.
So let me do the configuration. Config T F0 by 3 switch port, switch port mode trunk. Cancel. Fast forward. Now the packets should go from this side to this side. We have done all the configuration, and the packet should flow initially. Still the packet is failing, so maybe there is a mistake somewhere. um, real what happened, guys? Okay, these links have not been turned to their respective VLAN. They're still in VLAN 1. That's the problem, because I added a new switch. In this switch I did not do the configuration to put them into VLANs, right? So that's the problem right now. Let me just put them into VLANs. How did I know I did not put them into VLANs? Because the packet from this side flowed to this side. And if I had put them into different VLANs, the packet wouldn't have flowed to this side. So that was the problem. Just looking at the packet, I knew that I hadn't put them into different VLANs. Switch port access VLAN 100. Uh, switch port access VLAN 200. Now this is done. Real time. The R flows. Okay, the link has still not turned up. Let's delete that. Fast forward the time. Simulation. There will be some R queries before we can get the thing up and running for the default gateways. Now the packet is flowing completely. The first packet is supposed to fail because of the ARP entries. Successful. Right? So this is the configuration you need for this. I already put the router's configuration for you guys in the chat yesterday. Do you want it again or do you already have it?
Which one again? Sorry.
For the encapsulation, for encapsulating the whole thing. I put in the chat yesterday. Do you want the configuration?
Yeah, just put it again.
Why you did not save it? You should save it. Show run.
No, I didn't. I didn't save it.
Okay. So this was this. This was the configuration on the router. Let me put that in the chat for you guys. Configuration for both of them over here. Why is it coming switch? Oh, I've still, hold on. Okay. So guys, I have given you the configure. This is the end of VLAN routing. I showed you on both the multi-layer switch and the router as well. If I add another PC, let's say VLAN 300 over here, the only thing I need to do is put this port over here into VLAN 300 and sub interface this guy another time 0.3 IP address would be make it 30.0. Uh, 30.1.1.30 1.100 give the subnet mask 255.0.0 encapsulation.1q and the VLAN number should be 300 and these guys can talk with this PC also that would be in VLAN 300. So this is all about VLAN routing guys. I'm going to give you 15-20 minutes to get this done right now if you have not done it yesterday and then we can continue with STP what we left on yesterday, right? So you can do this I have given you the configuration in the chat. You can do it with a multi-layer switch and then with the router. Sounds good? Okay, let me stop sharing. Let me just first of all uh, stop sharing, recording, stop recording.